Hello everyone, this video is about corporate social reporting. Okay, let's get started. First, let's take a look at the definition of corporate social responsibility reporting. What is corporate social responsibility reporting? CSR reporting is a process whereby an organization publicly discloses information about its interaction with and impacts upon the various societies and environments in which it operates. There are two components in CSR reporting, which includes social reporting and environmental reporting. Social reporting is a component which provides information about such things as labor practices, for example, occupational health and safety, training and education, diversity and opportunity. Human rights performance such as non-discrimination, freedom of association and collective bargaining, child labor and indigenous rights. And product responsibility performance, for example, customer health and safety. Meanwhile, environmental reporting is a component of CSR reporting which could include the provision of information about such items as material usage, energy usage, water usage, emissions, effluents and waste, and compliance with regulation. Both social reporting and environmental reporting, together with economic performance reporting, are the components of sustainability reporting. These sustainability reporting are published by a company, and to prepare the report, there must be the application of accounting and accountability, where it is a duty to provide accounts on those actions. Next, what are the main areas voluntarily disclosed by an organization? CSR reporting, there are 5 main areas voluntarily disclosed by an organization, which are energy and product safety, fair business practices, human resources, community involvement, and product or service to customers.
Okay, next I would like to explain on the stages of sustainability reporting. There are 4 stages of sustainability reporting, which are Stage 1, why report, Stage 2, to whom to report, Stage 3, what to report, and Stage 4, how to report. The first stage is why report. It relates to management's motivations. There are 5 theories that explain why the company needs to disclose the information on how they perform towards the social environment, which are legitimacy theory, stakeholder theory, accountability model, institutional theory, and positive accounting theory. The second stage is to whom to report. If managers are motivated by a desire to increase shareholder value, then the company may focus on reporting to the shareholders. The third stage is what to report. The company must establish that there is a demand for information and identify the information through dialogue with stakeholders and negotiate a consensus among competing stakeholder needs and expectations. The company needs to use various channels of communication such as face-to-face meeting, questionnaire, or opinion polls in order to engage with the stakeholder. The last stage is how to report. This stage discusses on the limitations of traditional financial reporting on assessing the reporting of social environmental performance. It consists of several steps, which are objective of the general purpose of financial reporting, consideration of materiality, discounting liabilities of present value, the entity assumption, definition of the elements of financial reporting, focus on return to shareholder, issues of reliable measurement and probability, and focus on short-term results.
Next, we will discuss on the theory involved in CSR. The first theory is the legitimacy theory. This theory explains that the organization must comply to the regulation in order to meet the expectation of society. The focus of this theory is more on the social contract between organization and society. Social contract is the implicit and explicit expectations that society has about how the organization should conduct its operation and how company treat society and environment. Legal requirement is one of the examples of explicit expectation. However, the consequences or implication of not meeting the social contract is the organization may be difficult to obtain support and resources to continue your operations. Another focus of this theory is on the changes in community expectations. The organization should adapt to the changes in order to be accepted by the community. Besides that, there are some ways for company to legitimate. They are by communicate with community, prepare public disclosure, and do empirical tests on the legitimacy theory. Communicate with community is through gaining and maintaining legitimacy from the community. It is when the organization should anticipate in changing of community perceptions. Lindblom also suggests some strategies that managers might adopt when legitimacy is threatened, such as inform the community about the changes in company's performance and activities. Next is preparing public disclosure. Examples of public disclosure are the annual report, sustainability reports, and company's website. It is an important role as it highlights the strategic nature of financial statement and other related disclosure. In addition to that, the disclosures might be substantive or symbolic. Substantive disclosure reflect actual changes in corporate activities, while symbolic disclosure do not reflect the real change but are made to appear consistent with social values and expectations. For the empirical test on legitimacy theory, it is commonly used by researchers to examine social and environmental reporting practices. It is also used to explain the disclosures and the changing pattern of disclosure. For example, by investigating the objectivity of environmental disclosure practices and trends over time.
We will now turn our attention to stakeholder theory. Stakeholders is any identifiable group or individual who can affect the achievement of an organization's objective or is affected by the achievement of an organization's objective. There are two broad branches of stakeholder theory, which are ethical or moral or normative branch and positive or managerial branch. Now, I will explain on ethical branch. Under ethical branch of stakeholder theory, all stakeholders have the right to be treated fairly by an organization. Issues of stakeholder power are not directly relevant. Besides, management should manage the organization for the benefit of all stakeholders. Firm is a vehicle for coordinating stakeholder interests. Meanwhile, management have a fiduciary relationship to all stakeholders. Where interest conflict, business manage to attain optimal balance among them. However, each group merits consideration in its own right. Ethical branch also have a right to be provided with information even if not used. This perspective of corporate responsibilities is not validated or rejected on the basis of empirical observations. Stakeholder is divided into primary and secondary stakeholders. For primary stakeholders, it refers to ones without whose continuing participation the corporation cannot survive as a going concern. While for secondary stakeholders, it refers to those who influence or affect or are influenced or affected by the corporation but they are not engaged in transactions with the corporation and are not essential for its survival. As a result, ethical branch does not differentiate between primary and secondary stakeholders. Right to information on accountability. In considering rights to information, accountability is considered where the duty to provide an account of reckoning of those actions for which one is held responsible.
Accountability involves two responsibilities, which are to undertake certain actions and to provide an account of those actions. Reporting is assumed to be a responsibility rather than demand-driven. Testing of ethical branch of theory explained that, as the ethical branch embraces normative perspective about how the organization should act, it cannot be validated by empirical observations. As stated by Donaldson and Preston, in normative uses, the correspondence between the theory and the observed facts of corporate life is not a significant issue, nor is the association between stakeholder management and conventional performance measures a critical test. Instead of normative theory attempts to interpret the function of and offer guidance about the investor on cooperation on the basis of some underlying moral or philosophical principles. The next branch is managerial branch. Under managerial branch, corporate management will be likely to attend to the expectations of particular or powerful stakeholders. It is more on organization-centered, where stakeholders identified by the organization and extent to which organization believes relationship needs to be managed in interest of the organization. Besides, expectation of stakeholders considered to impact on operating and disclosure policies. Specifically, managerial branch considers the different stakeholder groups within society and how they should best be managed, where not society as a whole like legitimacy theory. Meanwhile, research undertaken under the managerial branch of stakeholder theory can be tested with empirical observation. Stakeholder power is one of the characteristics related to managerial branch. Organization will not respond to all stakeholders equally but to the most powerful. Stakeholder power is a function of the stakeholders' degree of control over resources required by the organization. For example, labor, finance, influential media, ability to legislate, ability to influence consumption of the organization's goods and services. However, major role of management is to assess the importance of meeting stakeholder demands so as to achieve strategic firm objectives. Expectations and power relatives of various stakeholders change over time. There are three roles of information, where information, including financial, accounting, and social performance information, is a major element employed to manage stakeholders. Next, it is used to gain support or approval. Information is also used to distract their opposition or disapproval. Lastly, we move to ethical view versus managerial view. By separately considering the two perspectives of stakeholder theory, it could be construed that management might either be ethically aware or focus on the survival of the organization. Second, management will arguably be driven by both ethical and performance considerations. Thirdly, we need to understand the complementary roles normative and descriptive research play.
The last theory that we will cover in this lecture is institutional theory. Institutional theory provides explanation why organizations tend to take on similar characteristics, form, processes, and practices. This theory links organization practices to societal value. We will focus on the definition and dimension involved in this theory, which is isomorphism and decoupling. Isomorphism here can be divided into three different processes. Institutional theory here is a theory that considers the processes by which structures, schemes, rules, norms, and routines become established as authoritative guidelines for social behavior. Institutional environment can influence the development of formal structure in an organization. Net effect of institutional pressure will lead to the increase in the homogeneity of organizational structure in an institutional environment. Now, let us look to the first dimension in institutional theory, which is isomorphism. Isomorphism is a constraining process that forces one unit to resemble with others units in the same environmental conditions. The three processes in isomorphism are coercive, mimetic, and normative. Coercive here means organizations change their institutional practices due to pressure from those stakeholders upon which the organization is dependent. Meanwhile, mimetic is when the organization copy other organizations' practices for competitive advantage and to reduce uncertainty. Normative is pressures from group norms to adopt particular institutional practices. Particular group with practical training tend to adopt similar practices. The outcome of isomorphism is that it is not easy to differentiate and it will make the organization to be less efficient. The last dimension is decoupling. Decoupling here means to separate or break up. Decoupling in institutional theory is when formal organization structure or practices is separate and distinct from actual organizational practice. For example, when the objective of corporate reports and disclosure in organization is social and environmental responsibility, but in actual managerial imperative is maximization of profit or stakeholder value.